Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 20th meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. Before we dive into the agenda, I just wanted to say a few things. Mainly, I wanted to say thank you and congratulations to everyone on another school year. It's officially over for the kids as of Friday, and I just want to recognize everyone who works in our district. It's been a long 3 years for everyone, and we made it through the third year. We've been through a lot, and I just want to say how much we value your commitment to our kids. Everything you do is about the kids, and we see it every day. And we truly appreciate it. It matters, and we see your commitment. And so I just want to take this moment to celebrate and thank everyone who works in our schools every day with the kids, and just congratulate you on finishing this year, and just how much we hope you enjoy your well-deserved summer. So thank you, everyone. With that, we have a busy agenda ahead, so I'll take a motion. Oh, well, just before we approve the agenda, we're just going to move up one item, the overnight field trip approval. We're going to move to the top of the agenda. So with that change, can I have a motion? Bill? Dan? All in favor? Thank you. And we have Erica Schwedel and Brendan joining online tonight. Hi. Next is the approval of minutes, the May 23rd meeting. May I have a motion? Penny, second. Hugo, all in favor? It's unanimous. Motion to approve the June 6th meeting minutes. Penny. Bob, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. Is there anyone here wishing to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. So first up is an action item, the overnight field trip approval. Dr. Lutzy, do you want to introduce this to the board?
I'd love to. I'm going to invite Leo Fix to join us here at the podium. Leo is our orchestra conductor. I was complimenting him on his students' performance at graduation on Thursday. They played beautifully. Leo, do you want to just talk briefly about the trip? I know we've done the trip before.
Yes.
And
So in March of 2023, we want to take the band, choir, and orchestra to Disney. We did this trip in 2018. We were actually planning on doing it last year, but that obviously didn't work. So the nice thing about this is that it's a known quantity. We're using the same travel agent. We're pretty much doing the same basic itinerary that we would. And it was a very positive and rewarding experience when we did it in 2018. So that's comforting to know that we're, just doing another version of it.
Mm-hmm. And I want to compliment, and Alan's here as well. Hello, Alan. Having the three, band, choir, and orchestra go together is not common amongst high schools, I don't believe. I think that it's something a little special that you all do. Yes,
it is. And I think it also bonds the students and the faculty with that overnight situation. And also we share in each other's performances, and it's a very positive team-building kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
So under Board of Education policy, overnight trips come before the board for approval. And you're here early because the trip is in March.
Right.
So approval, I'm thinking, would give you an opportunity to do any fundraising or any other planning that's required.
Yes. We have, there's the longstanding grapefruit fundraiser that's in place, and we've been kicking around some ideas for some other things to help raise funds for those that can't afford the trip on their own.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you for the update. With that,
we need a motion.
Yep. With that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the proposed overnight field trip for students in New Canaan High School Choir, Band, and Orchestra to participate in the Festival Disney Experience March 23rd, March 26th, 2023. Bob, second. Dan, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so under reports and recognition, we have 3 reports tonight. The first is with Mr. Egan, our athletic director, and he's going to give us an overview of athletics this year.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here tonight. I have a lot of really good information to share with you, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Before I do, I would like to just publicly thank Joanne Keating for all that she has done in her time in New Canaan, but particularly my interactions with Joanne have been really educational and instructive for me with respect to process and the right way to do things. Having said that, she has a way of making sure that you do things the right way, but making sure that you know that she really wants to help you get them done. So, I think that we're going to miss you, and I thank you. Publicly like to thank you for all the help that you've been to me and to New Canaan High School athletics. So tonight I'd like to go through the athletic year in review, talk a little bit about participation, our All Sports Booster Club. I have a budget comparison that you might be interested in, and then some things going forward. Before I get started, though, I would like to say I've been working in New Canaan since 1985, and I'm the third athletic director at New Canaan High School in 65 years. So Joe Sikorsky was here for 24 years, from 1959 till 79, and 79 to, I think, 2004, Ben Iovino, and then I finished my 18th year. And the reason I'm even mentioning that is just as a testament to the community and to the school and to the support and to all the factors that come together here with student interest, with our excellent coaching staff, and with the support that we have from the parents, and I think importantly the support that we have from the town for not only for education but specifically in my case for athletics. So guiding principles for our programs: we encourage student athletes to make a strong commitment to academics and athletics. My funny story is when I first came here in 85 or 86, it was 85 actually, I was assistant football coach and I was teaching physical education at West School. So my first day at football practice, there was a bunch of the guys were talking in a circle, and I said, well, maybe I'll go over and try to get to know somebody, try to get to know the players and have some conversations. So I'd coached a number of places and I had played a number of places, and I didn't know what I was going to hear when I walked over to this group of boys. When I walked over, they were arguing about a chemistry problem. And that is a 100% true story. They were arguing about a chemistry problem. And so, that kind of was my first introduction to the real balance that exists at New Canaan High School between academics and athletics and how they're equally important. And it's something that I think I'm really proud of, that we have been able to maintain that and encourage that. So we also encourage athletes to conduct themselves in a manner which brings credit to themselves, to New Canaan High School. Our coaches promote the development of self-discipline, high academic and athletic expectations. Before I go through here, I did add a few things. I sent my PowerPoint to Brian on Friday, and then I just added a few pictures. There's not much, none of the content is much different, so it may be a little different from what you received. After graduation, we had the FCAC end of the year awards dinner, and so at that dinner every year they present, they call it the FCAC Cup. They present it to a large school and a small school who excel in these following categories: participation, scholarship, achievement, competitive results, and service to the league. So I'm proud to say that New Canaan High School was the small school recipient of the FCAC Cup this year based on all those criteria. This is a running, accurate tabulation of New England or state championships and runners-up since 1961. And again, I think this speaks to New Canaan High School's long, rich tradition of excellence, in this case athletically, academically, but in this case athletically. So, we lead all these teams with fine athletic programs and a lot of the schools that are a lot bigger than we are, which has a significant impact on athletic competition. But, we still have won the most championships. Our cousins down the street have more runners up, but that's okay. We still lead in the important categories.
A lot of that's our fault.
Yeah. So this year, 21-22, as I mentioned, we had a ceremony for our athletes, our senior athletes on Wednesday. And we went over a lot of this, what we were able to accomplish this year. But it really has been a tremendous year athletically for New Canaan High School. I, with my colleagues and others, hear a lot of talk about the effect that COVID had on skills and motivation and interest. And I have to tell you that none of those things have happened at New Canaan High School. Our athletes have come out of this, have gone through it in a highly motivated state. Their skills are high, and our numbers did not diminish. And as I think about this, and we might go, I think it has to go back to how New Canaan was able to navigate its way through COVID and all the issues related to COVID. We were in school more. We had, there was more normalcy for us than for a lot of other schools. Probably, I don't know about the country, but I certainly know about the FCAC and the state. So anyway, our field hockey team was 22-1. They're FCAC runners-up on like an incredibly unlucky bounce, and they're Class L champions. And football, 9-1, FCAC champions. Now, there's no FCAC championship game because the rules that exist as far as how many games of football you can play, there's safety-related rules. So what they do is they have PowerPoints in football, and because of our victory over Darien on Thanksgiving Day, we went ahead of St. Joe's, so we had more points, so therefore we didn't win it on the field, but we were declared FCAC champions. We were Class LL semifinalists. It wasn't one of our most talented teams, but it was a bunch of kids that really liked to play together and allowed themselves to be coached, and it was a fun group to be around. Boys golf, they're FCAC and CIAC Division I champions. I tried to explain this again last Wednesday. I did a poor job of it, I thought, but I'll try again. So Bill Brown, our golf coach, has to be the answer to a trivia question because Bill Brown coached a team in the same sport that won 2 FCAC championships and 2 CIAC championships. They moved golf from the spring to the fall. So they won last spring, and then they won again this fall. So I think that would be a good New Canaan trivia question going forward. Girls golf is 13-0. They're FCAC and State Division I champions. They're 45-0 over the last 3 years. Boys swim and dive. They're Eastern Division champions. They're Class L champions, and they're third at the State Open. The way individual sports are organized in CIAC competition is that you compete within your division, which has to do with the size of your school. And then the winners from those divisions, it's basically a qualifier for an overall championship. So these open meets are championships. So that's third overall in the state, regardless of the size of the school. Girls hockey is 24-0-1, FCAC and state champions. May have played the most exciting game that's ever been played in high school hockey. And it was 2 games long. And the funniest story about it is the goalie's mother was standing in a hallway where they're facing the wall through the whole 3 overtime periods. It was an amazing game to be at. I mean, both of those teams, the effort that was put forth on ice that night is something that anybody that's there will never forget. Girls lacrosse was 20-1, FCAC and Class L champions. Boys volleyball, great story. The program was started about 8 or 9 years ago by a young man who loved volleyball, and so they had to establish a program, a JV program, and it has really grown. Amy Warren's our coach. She's done a tremendous job. They have a great camaraderie among the group. The first time in the state finals, they played Joel Barlow, who hadn't given up a set all year. We didn't win, but I think the score was 25-22, 25-22, and 25-20. So they were extremely competitive, and I was glad to see it. I was glad to be there and watch them play. They gave a great account of themselves, although they didn't win. Now, this is the unusual, I think extremely unusual and so special. We have 4 of our women's teams that are the #1 ranked teams in Connecticut at the end of this year. That's field hockey, girls ice hockey, girls golf, and girls lacrosse. And this is like this information comes across, I think, from my professional journals and everything, so I'm just aware of it, and I think it's kind of an interesting fact. June 23rd is the 50th, June 23rd, a couple days from now, is the 50th anniversary of Title IX being enacted into law. And so you think about 4 girls teams and all that they have, and the increase from that time, from June 3rd, 50 years ago, there was 295,000 females participating in athletics at the high school level. There's now 2.6 million women competing at the high school level. It's a 9-fold increase as a result of the enactment of Title IX. I think that's a pretty cool fact, given what happened, well, given anything, but certainly what happened as far as our women's athletic teams are concerned. We had 3 coaches of the year: Bill Brown, answer to the trivia question, boys golf; Mary Claire Seneca, our field hockey coach, great coach, great addition to Canaan High School athletics; and Rich Bulin in girls ice hockey. Our student participation, I mean, it's great that we accomplish all those things, and I'm really proud of it, and our coaches are proud of it, and everybody should be proud of it. But I think where I'm really most proud of is the student participation level that we have at the school. And so these are numbers that come directly off of our CIAC eligibility list. So these are real numbers, and a unique athlete is the difference between total names and a unique athlete. A unique athlete may be obvious that it's an individual who might play multiple sports, but they're on the eligibility list multiple times, but it's only one person. So it's 891, and the enrollment is 1283, and that works out to right around 70% participation level. So 70% of the students at New Canaan High School are participating in athletics at some point during the course of the year. And that's really what we want, right? We want them to be engaged in performing arts. We want them to be engaged in ways in addition to what they do during the school day. So that's, really, of all the information that I have to share with you tonight, I think that's what we're most proud of. I put sports participation in here because I just want you to be aware that the understanding that we have with our coaches is when we don't have to make cuts on a team, we will not make cuts. There are some times in some sports that are limited by facilities, they're limited by the ability to practice or have meaningful competition. So, these numbers are as large as you'll see for the particular sports. Obviously, outdoor track, we don't cut there. Boys soccer, we haven't cut. Field hockey, we haven't cut. Girls lacrosse, girls soccer, we haven't cut. Baseball, we have had to make cuts. So anyway, this is the purpose of, I'm not going to go through every sport, but this is the purpose of me sharing this with you so that you can see the number of athletes and how how many are participating in each particular sport. Our boys ice hockey number is high. The JV program is quite robust at this point, and we have two coaches that are doing a great job with that. And there's interest. They played a lot of games. They had a postseason tournament which they won, and it was a lot of fun for them. And so that's some of the sub-varsity sports. It's difficult to find opportunities for competition. Girls ice hockey is one of them. So most teams in Connecticut don't have JV girls ice hockey programs. So that kind of affects us, how many kids that we have that are interested. We don't have anybody to play. Boys volleyball right now is competing only at the varsity and JV level. Boys volleyball is a growing sport. A couple more teams in the FCAC are participating this year, but there is no freshman program. Softball is one of the sports that in New Canaan, they've done a really great job at the youth level creating interest. But across the league, softball is actually down, and some of the programs that you would never expect, like a Trumbull and a Darien, didn't even field JV programs this year, which was, a little bit of a surprise to a lot of us. So I think that's what's important there. So we conducted, there's two ceremonies that we conduct on a yearly basis that recognize athletes that are going on to participate in college. This is a national letter of intent signing ceremonies. These are Division I athletes that have signed a binding letter because they're receiving some athletic aid from an institution, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 here. And I don't have Ned Brady because Ned's a football player. They had a different date. So we have 11 Division I athletes that signed national letters of intent. Something that we've been doing recently, which I'd really like to share with you because I think it says, again, a lot about what New Canaan is all about. So we like to recognize the athletes who, for one reason or another, maybe aren't going to be Division I players, or they don't want to be, and they have the Division III schools that fit their academic and athletic interest. So when I was preparing for the Division III commitment ceremony, I thought it would be really important to have some context about Division III for everybody that was there. So I'd like to just read to you, so I think it's important for you to have as well. Division III is the largest division in terms of number of institutions and number of participants in the NCAA. With more than 196,000 students and 446 institutions representing 66 conferences. Division III makes up 40% of the NCAA's total membership. Enrollments at Division III schools range from more than 24,000 to less than 300, giving the entire division an average of 2,600 students per member. On average, student athletes make up 27% of the student body on Division III campuses. And I won't read their names, but just listen to the schools that there's 19 senior athletes up there. Johns Hopkins, Bowdoin, Williams, Denison, Franklin and Marshall, Roger Williams, Trinity, Washington and Lee, Denison, Suffolk University, Williams, Colby, Bowdoin, Colby, Carnegie Mellon, Coast Guard. We have 2 kids that football players are going to be roommates at Carnegie Mellon. So in all, we recognized 30 senior athletes. So we have 156 senior athletes. So 20% of the senior athletes that participated in our programs are going on to participate in college. Now that's not our goal, but it is important that we can fulfill that interest and those kids' dreams as far as being able to continue their athletic career. Okay. I always like to talk about the All Sport Booster Club because I know that it is a unique group as far as high schools are concerned. I have colleagues of mine from around the league and around the state asking me all the time about how it got organized and what it's all about. It was organized by my predecessor, Vin Iovino. I think in the first or second year he came to New Canaan High School. And he was, I would say, a visionary in many ways. So when he came, he discovered that the football team had won the FCAC championship, and instead of having a banquet, they took them to the Super Bowl. So I guess he thought that was something that could create problems as far as equity was concerned. So he came up with this concept of the All Sports Booster Club. So there's a board of volunteers who are interested in enriching the athletic program and in these ways, lowering the coach-to-athlete ratio, providing CPR and first aid, which is necessary for all of our coaches. We're supporting technology, and we have a partnership with NCTV. I saw Emily running around here before. Administer summer camp program. We administer a summer camp program, and they create community partnerships. So the only group that's going out into the community that's advertising and going out on behalf of New Canaan High School Athletics is the All Sport Booster Club. Going back to Title IX, one other very important function of the All Sport Booster Club is it acts as a control for private funding coming into the athletic program. We, me, you, all of us are responsible for that equity, whether it's public or private. So we wouldn't want to have a sport out on its own raising a lot of money and creating different situations as far as the experience of the athletes who participate. And this group allows us This structure allows us to prevent that from happening. So again, enriching all of the programs by lowering the coach-to-athlete ratio. We have 112 total coaching positions. The Board of Education funds 74. The Booster Club pays for 38 additional coaches. So that's more than one coach for each sport. 34% of the coaching staff, and this year the All Sport Booster Club's contribution was $152,000. Let me just say that we are well funded publicly. The athletic department is well funded publicly. This is enrichment. So this is a way for a community like New Canaan to, the best way to enrich the program is to create the lower coach-to-athlete ratio. It's more adults, more kids can connect with more adults on a regular basis. So this is the way it broke out this year. The additional coaching contributions, that was this breakout for the 21-22 school year. The All Sport Booster Club runs a series of summer camps. We run a strength and conditioning program, the world famous Ben Young All Sports Camp, and basketball, tennis. We also run high school camps that allow the athletes to prepare in preseason for their sport without violating any CIAC rules. So last year we had 1,562 total campers. Now, I've been working with this summer camp program since before I was the athletic director. And it has really evolved to something that is really good for everybody that's involved. It is a service to the community. And it is also a way for our coaches to get some additional income. So it's a retention tool as far as our good coaches are concerned, our high quality coaching staff that we have, that helps them out, as far as summer and income is concerned. So this budget comparison that I put in, this is, it's important that you know where it came from. So this is from athletic directors plugging in information about their school districts. And my information, I can only speak for our information. I know mine's accurate because I got it from Tracy. So I plugged in exactly what she told me to plug in. I can't speak for my colleagues. I would assume that they did the same thing, but so I just want you to understand that this is just like a for your information type of chart. I don't know if this is 100% accurate. You can see the sizes of the schools. I think the Board of Education funding is probably fairly accurate. As far as the additional funding is concerned, again, I know ours is. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that you'll see in the column to the extreme right, which has to do with pay for play. It has to do with some partial funding of club sports. It has to do with we don't have any information about Wilton, so I know they have some modified pay-for-play program there. So I just thought I would include this for your information. Again, so I think we do pretty well. I think we have we're very well funded, and I think we do pretty well. As far as comparing to other schools, especially schools like Darien and Wilton that are exactly the same, almost exactly the same size as we are in the same type of communities. Okay, going forward, so I just have a few things here that I think you might be interested in, I think that you should know about. And so I just put them in this category. And transportation, athletic transportation is the first thing that I just want to say that we have all worked very hard trying to find a way to make this work. And just so you know, all the surrounding towns have trouble with buses. They have trouble getting buses at certain times of the day. We've all outsourced a good percentage of our transportation. Everyone, all the surrounding communities are having the same problem. We have had games canceled, not because we couldn't get buses, but because people couldn't get to us. Couldn't get a bus to get to us. So this, I don't know where this is going to go. I mean, I've been thinking about this and talking about it for a number of years. I don't know if it's going to end up as private athletic transportation within the district. I know, there's a lot of issues with that. I know, but I do know that this is a problem, and it's continued to be a challenge. We've worked hard at it. Joanna's been directly involved in it. My assistant, Christina Bell, who does a good job with, keeping track of everything that needs to be kept track of. She spends a fair amount of time on this on every day, confirming our athletic transportation. And Saturday morning, every morning you have like a pit in your stomach to make sure that the buses show up. Well, they didn't show up for the field hockey championship, and we actually went in cars. So that's a funny story. One of our trainers was also driving up to the game. Well, she was driving up to the game. She didn't expect that the girls were driving up, and so she was on the Merritt Parkway, and the girls went by her and waving out the window. So that really happened. Finding and retaining coaches. I mentioned a little bit about retaining coaches with the summer camps. It's going to be an increasing problem to find coaches, either teach coaches or teachers that are coaches, or coaches that are coming from the private sector. New Canaan is a very desirable place to come and coach, and we will struggle with finding, for example, a freshman field hockey coach. We have an opening right there right now. Finding cheerleading coaches. I mean, these are all really difficult. Wrestling coaches. Bobby Rushton, was our head wrestling coach, and he's recently named the athletic director at Wilton. So that's another opening that'll be really a hard coach to find. He'll be a hard person to replace, but it'll be a hard coach. It'll be a hard coaching position to find. Let me see what else I have here. So presently, of the 112 coaches that we have, 45 are teachers. So that's 40%. I know the numbers don't work out quite right, but there are many of them coach multiple sports. So that's why those numbers are what they are. The most desirable situation that we can have is have as many of our teachers coaching as possible. They are trained working with kids. They're trained in teaching and learning, and they are it's far superior to have any coach in any teacher in any of these coaching positions than someone from the outside. Not to say that people from the outside can't do it well, but the content is way less important than your knowledge of teaching and learning. So speaking of teaching and learning, so this is what an effective coach looks like. So someone that can provide performance feedback, create high levels of engagement. Effective managers demonstrate high levels of enthusiasm, strong knowledge of content, plan effective practices, and study their methodology. It might look familiar to a lot of the educators in the room because these are qualities of effective teachers, and I just put coaches there, but teaching is coaching, right? So good coaching is good teaching is good coaching. And so it's not just anybody that, I always think about coaching is it's way more difficult than it looks. And people have not done it, and people that look at people doing it, they think that it's really, how hard could that be? It's quite difficult and quite challenging. And particularly, I think that JV and freshman coaches really have to have the whole package, because not only do they have to understand how to teach, but they have to really be good at engaging the students in what they're trying to teach. So the other information that I thought was important for you to have is, given our new start times, that this is the way we have this organized so far. Daily practice, if we don't have any facility limitation, will be at 3:15. Our afternoon home games will be at 4:30. I'm assuming that our swim meets are going to be at 3 o'clock still. Ice hockey, boys and girls swimming, and golf, I'm not sure that their practices are going to be able to be at 3:15. I know we've talked to the people at the rink as far as the schedule is concerned, so they're well aware and they know that, you know, whatever that means, whether it's later practices some days or earlier practices, that's going to happen. We haven't had an answer from the Y with respect to what time our practices are going to be. So, you know, that's yet to be determined. The other thing that I would mention is I don't have control over the time that away games start, and our league does not have a common start time of 4:30. So while it might seem that in many cases we'll be able to have 4:30 start times, it also may be that we can't, because a lot of schools have maybe one artificial surface, and those surfaces are booked up just like ice rinks are. You know, this one thing after another. So they may not be able to have that half an hour lag. So I just want to say before we get there next year that as much as people will try to cooperate with us and we will ask for a 4:30 time, it's possible that that might not happen all the time. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. Is this going to work? What am I going to press? I know it's a lot of, I'm going back and forth from a lot of things, but this is, I'm going to show you a little preview of what I think our new lights are going to look like. The town has, Dunning Stadium was built in 1997, and the poles, when they were put in, were straight. They're not straight anymore. And there's the reliability of those lights are really in question. A year ago, we hosted the FCAC Championship, and some of you might remember it was a rainy weekend, and it rained all night, and it was raining in the morning. It was so dark that when I got here, I turned the lights on. So the game was at 11, so I turned the lights on at about 9 o'clock. This is a year ago. Half of the lights came on. So, you know, half of the lights on each pole came on. And at one point last year, we had, there was a fire inside of one of the poles. So there's been some issues with the lights. You know, we've been talking about it with the town for about a year and a half. And everyone on the town side, we put it into the parks budget. I mean, the superintendent's budget, park superintendent's budget. And so it stayed in this year. And we have a contract with Musco to replace the lights this summer. And I think that at some point around the end of July, there'll be 4 new poles. The poles will be taken down. There'll be 4 new poles. The lighting will be LED lighting. And because it's LED lighting, this is not really an extra what I'm going to show you. It's just like what they can do with the lights now, which I thought you might be interested in seeing. Now, how do you think I can make this move? Just click on it? So this is supposed to be able to be going on when the game's going on. So it's like, this actually is going to happen. So it does a number of things. We've got people waiting here. I don't want to go through the whole. What's that? Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was worth showing anyway. The last slide that I have, it just this is a thought that I would like to just share with all of you, and because it really, I think, speaks to what we're most concerned with now, and is that just the mental health of student athletes, everyone in general, but in our case, students. So starting with youth sports and on through sport in general, there's two ways to look at competition. One is outcome focused, the other is process oriented. You know, now if you're a swimmer or if you're somebody that is an individual sport person, you understand that your individual preparation is all you can do. So all you can control is your individual preparation. And what I'd like to see, and what we're trying to do with our athletes, is to focus on the process, not the outcome. We can't control the outcome. So that creates anxiety and that creates stress. What we can control is the process. We can come to practice every day. We can try to be the best player on the field every day. We can listen to our coaches. We can learn how to learn. And we can understand that sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. And as long as we have done our best throughout the entire process, then we should be able to be comfortable with not being successful. And I'm not sure we're there. I'm not sure we're there. I'm friendly with the person that assigns referees for lacrosse, and he said they have had more issues this year, not with New Canaan, not only with New Canaan, but with, in general, of sportsmanship than they can ever remember, all the coaches. So this is from youth soccer to high school seniors. You know, and the more that we can talk about this and the more that we can emphasize this, the better off young people are going to be. Because if you think about it, if they know that they did their best and they know that they prepared as well as they could, they can be at peace with not being successful. And then they can try to go back and do something different to try to be successful next time. But I see a lot of teams that we play against that, and sometimes in our teams, that our focus is only on the outcome. So, I think from an athletics perspective and from a community athletics perspective, that let's focus on the practice, let's focus on the process, and learning how to be coached is really important. Learning that sometimes you're going to do things well, sometimes you're not. Your feedback is going to be positive. Your feedback is going to be authentic that you get from a coach, and it's okay. And the last thing that I would say, and this goes right back to how we can, under no circumstances should a parent ever disqualify any adult that works with their kid under any circumstances. Because if you do it once, you've done it to all the rest of the adults that are ever going to work with your son or daughter. And then they will not be able to have the benefits of all of these talented people that they're going to run into as they go through their athletic career. So that's all I have, guys.
Thank you, Mr.
Happy to
Egan.
answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Just want to say congratulations on a very meaningful and successful season for our coaches and all the kids that participate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Penny, go ahead.
Thank you for this tremendous result and effort on behalf of the kids. I was just wondering, with the sort of increased traffic and congestion and the difficulty with buses, is there any talk about changing the composition of the schools with which we compete, the FCAC? I mean, obviously, it's easier to get to schools that are closer by.
Yeah, the league was organized for geographic proximity for competition. Actually, I don't think that there are any other schools that are in the CIAC. The private schools, because private schools are not in the CIAC, so we couldn't compete against them at this point.
Right.
But the league was organized for with respect to geographic proximity for competition. So we're already playing, with the exception of Danbury and Trumbull, we're already playing the teams that are closest to us.
Bill?
Just quickly, in terms of the coaching positions, so 45 certified teachers, do you know by any chance what male and female, or what that breakdown is?
Bill, can you turn your mic on?
Oh,
Yeah,
got it.
thanks.
Sorry. The coaching positions, 45, roughly male-female breakdown, any idea?
I do not. I know that we have more female coaches than, we're fortunate to have more female coaches than a lot of people do, but I do not know. I can find that out. All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. We look forward to seeing the entire light show sometime in the fall.
Yeah. See concerts in our future. Okay. Next, we have update on standards-based grading with Ms. Melinda Meyer. Dr. Krenti or Dr. Lutzy, do you want to introduce?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Melinda is back by popular demand to talk about standard-based grading. As you know, she briefly mentioned it in her presentation when she was giving an update on the next generation science standards, K-8. And tonight she'll be giving us an update on standard-based grading, reflecting on the presentations she's done in the past, and then hoping to answer any questions about our path for the future. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Board of Education members and Chair and Administration, for providing the opportunity tonight to provide an update on the standard-based grading at Sachs Middle School. I would like to introduce you to the Sachs administration and coordinators that represent part of our curriculum leadership team that are here with us tonight. So we have Sarah Bruss, who is the ELA coordinator, Nicole Graham, who is our K-8 mathematics coordinator, Mary Hannah, who is our K-8 social studies coordinator, and then our principal, Mr. David Gussich. Tonight's presentation will reference a variety of past board presentations that include the assessment presentation in November, the Next Generation Science Assessments presentation back in December, and also will reference the last standard-based grading presentation from 2018. This evening, we will review what is standard-based grading, how student progress in science is reported, and dive deeper into some examples that will put into context why the science program at Sachs uses this system for providing feedback to families and to students. Standard-based grading is represented by district goal number 1, objective 1, and section E. Review current practices in standard-based grading at Sachs and share feedback from all stakeholders in order to determine future next steps with standard-based grading in district. And before we dive in, I did want to share with you that this slide represents the Sachs Middle School Science Department, 5-8, and I included the 5th grade, although 6 through 8 are the teachers that utilize standard-based grading, because the 5th grade is part of the elementary school, and the elementary report card is very similar to the standard-based grading report card that we use at the upper grade levels. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here with the history of standard-based grading that we have in science. It started back in 2009. And in 2009, Connecticut science standards had been well established, and these are the old standards. We had developed our curricular units, we had been tested by the Connecticut Mastery Test, and we had engaged in our work of performance task design, formative and summative assessments, and our district at that time was focused on differentiation. And it prompted discussion within the department about the challenges of traditional grading when you're looking at all these aspects of education. And this challenge and questions led us to spend a large part of 2009 to 2011 researching and attending workshops by leaders in education, such as Marzano, Pickering, Romelli, and others. We subscribed to a variety of webinars and online courses during that time and visited schools in Connecticut that used standard-based grading and saw how they implemented it within their programs. In 2011 to 2012, we started to write something called learning progressions, and we'll look at that a little bit later, what those are, for grades 6 and 8, and plan to implement a pilot of 2 teachers in those grade levels the following year. And in 2012 to 2014, we had a big kind of motion year where we conducted large-based studies of standard-based grading with the formation of leadership subcommittees, and the Sachs administration presented to the PTCs starting in that May at the end of the year. When we had open science positions in our department, we targeted the recruitment of new science teachers to be those with a deep understanding of science and a mindset for how to provide effective feedback to students. The administration developed a concrete rollout plan for the full 6-8 transition, and we examined ways that standard-based grading could function in Power School. And finally, with a plan in place and a bridge in Power School, we were able to implement in grade 6 in 2014 and 15. During this time, administrators continued to communicate with parents and established standard-based grading solidly in the Power School portal. The last phase of the implementation work in 2016-17 was with the high school department chair to plan our student transition and placement with the high school. We knew that when we shifted to standard-based grading, we needed to design a system that would allow the high school to continue to use science data in the placement of our students as they enter the high school. And by 2017, we were fully implementing standard-based grading in grades 6 through 8. And this brings us to our recent work and future work. And here we're continuing to revise assessment criteria, adding additional performance assessments, and improving communication. So I've used the word standard-based grading a few times already in the presentation. And before we dive a little bit more about into what that is, I want to pause for a moment and actually review what is the purpose of grades. So these that are listed here on the board are guiding principles for grading in any discipline. Grades are a measurement. Grades are a measurement and feedback tool. Grades are a system used to communicate academic progress to students, parents, and teachers. And grades are indicators of what students know, understand, and can do, and they provide guidance to students regarding how they can improve. Oh. There is a slide missing. Yeah, you have that. I'm so sorry. We're going to leave the slide up for a moment, but in your packets, you have a slide that says, what is standard-based grading? So researchers describe standard-based grading as being a system of assessing and reporting that describes student progress in relation to standards. It represents depth of understanding of a standard. The scale for standard-based grading that we use is a 1 to 4 scale, and each number represents how students are demonstrating their understanding of a standard. And we will explain more about what that represents a little bit later as well. It is a growth model, which means that it represents and communicates where the student is currently performing. In traditional grades, the grades are averaged from those at the beginning of the quarter, with grades at the end of the quarter. So you may receive 70s at the beginning of your learning, because you're learning the material, you don't quite have mastered it yet. And then 90s at the end of the quarter, because now you're closer to mastery of it. But your quarter grade is probably an 80, because it's an average of the 70s and the 90s, putting you in the 80s. In a growth model, your score represents your level of understanding and mastery of the content standard at the end of the marking period, accurately representing where you stand in understanding concept or standards. So you may have started with 1s at the beginning as you were learning, progressing into 2s and 3s, and maybe ending with 4s, and that's what's represented at the end of the quarter, what it is that you currently understand. It also separates academic and non-academic elements. Academic is content specific, so those are your science standards. And non-academic is organization, time management, or participation or collaboration. I think we're missing another slide. Okay, thank you. Perfect. So you have another slide here before we catch up to this one. In this chart, we compare traditional grading to standard-based grading. I'm not going to read all the bullets, but I will zoom in on a few. So with the first bullet, in traditional grading, it represents how the students performed holistically on the assessment. So it takes all the questions and the standards into account when reporting one score. However, a single score could be misleading. If you think about a project that's turned in at the end of our marking period, the student turned it in late, however. So in traditional grading, they may have gotten everything correct and would have received 100. But they had 10 points taken off because it was late. So the late penalty may hide the fact that they had really strong content knowledge because the student's zooming in on that 90, that 10 points off, and what can I do now to show that I understand it? In standard-based grading, you get multiple scores. So one for content showing that you master the content standard, so you might be a 3 or a 4, and you get another score for the time management, maybe a 2, giving you direct feedback that that's an area that you need to work on. Bullets 3 and 5 also address the same theme, but in a slightly different way. In traditional grading, the course grade is an average for the quarter, and all the standards you worked on within that quarter get averaged in. In standard-based grading, standards are listed, and you have a score that represents the current level of understanding for that standard, not all the standards combined. So now I slide how caught up to where we are right now. So leaders and researchers in education describe the strength of standard-based grading for students, parents, and teachers. And some of these strengths are listed on this chart. For students, success is clearly defined by the learning targets. Students know what it means to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4 and can identify their next steps, which enable them to monitor their progress and set goals. The third bullet represents that not one assessment is weighted more than another, which just means that our students are assessed daily in all the work that they do, from the questions that they ask, to the questions that they raise, to the way they answer them, to the way they respond in writing. It all represents their current level of thinking. For parents, it's clear what your students know, can do, and where they can grow. And for teachers, we can spend our time focused on planning, instruction, and assessment rather than determining what is an 82, an 83, or an 84. But I can't leave this slide without adding one more bullet. Mary Hannah and I conducted focus groups of 7th grade students, and they share something that isn't listed here. They share that they were willing to take more risks with answering questions in class, tackling a problem, trying to demonstrate their thinking in a different way, because there is no failure. You may recall that our student on the Innovation Steering Committee also talks about this and shares how important this ability is for both learning and for creating an environment for innovation. You have heard me mention the 1 to 4 scale now a couple of times. And there are many analogies that are out there to represent the learning progression. But I thought this one is something that we could all relate to, learning how to ride a bike. From tricycle to training wheels to 2 wheels to more aggressive riding. The slide describes in detail what the scores 1 to 4 represent. It describes how you're demonstrating your understanding of the content standard. No score is bad, it's just where you are, and each step describes how you think about the content at a different level of complexity. For example, a 2 means that the student is at a definition, labeling, identifying stage of learning. At level 3, they're applying to ways they're manipulating it in class or explaining scientific phenomenon. And at a level 4, students may be connecting it to other content standards, applying it to new scenarios or new phenomenon. So let's take a closer look at how this is communicated through PowerSchool. This is what an ELA standard looks like. This is all the learning from the quarter, all the standards, and also the non-academic scores averaged together and presented at the end of a quarter. It's all communicated in this one score. Now, we're going to talk about standard-based grading in a moment, but let's go through all the traditional views in PowerSchool that parents and students have access to. When they click on the B+ or the B or the A-, it brings them to an assignment view. So this slide represents assignments that are in the ELA program. It shows categories which look different from teacher to teacher. This educator has it represented by reading, writing, and then chose to combine homework and classwork into the same category. Then you have the assignment title. So some examples of assignment titles are character presentation, HF post-it check, building background knowledge, and the last columns are the scores. It doesn't say much about what the standards are connected to the assignments. What does the student know as a result of the assignment? And what are the next steps to support the student in growing? So let's go back to take a look at standard-based grading and how it's communicated through PowerSchool. So there's a lot on the screen right there. It's pretty small. So we're going to zoom in to see exactly what it's showing. It lists each of the content standards that your child has been working on. And if you recall from the Next Generation Science Standard presentation, the NGSS is written with 3 dimensions. And these dimensions are identified within the PowerSchool categories. So you have the content knowledge, you have scientific and engineering practices, then you also have cross-cutting concepts, not on this slide in particular. And we also have a segment called Habits of Success. And this separates the academic from the non-academic elements of grading. And if you look at the slide, you'll see the actual science content standard listed, and then the student's current level of performance or understanding or score. And the scores are listed as numbers 1 through 4. We do have half increments, which you can see here. And 3 represents mastery of the standard, or what we're expecting as a grade level expectation. By clicking on the letters SBG for standard-based grading in the portal, you are also taken to an assignment view that looks just like the traditional grading view. And this is an example of what our student assignments look like. It also contains the same headings as a traditional view. However, you will notice that the assignment names also include the dimension that it's measuring. So, such as McKenna's final model DCI or SEP. So those are the 3 dimensions that's identifying. You'll also notice that we have multiple scores for the assignment, again, focusing on each of the strands that we're looking for. And then what is different, you might notice, is that there's these blue graph buttons right in the middle of the screen. And so for assignments that don't always have a standard link directly under the assignment name for teachers, if you click on those, and I've done 3 of them for you towards the bottom, you're going to see like 3 little graphs that get kicked over to the left. They provide more details on the assignment by providing the standard that is assigned. So in the first one that you see unopened or opened, it says in this class, the exit ticket for McKenna, the standard is engaging an argument from evidence. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into understanding how learning progressions are developed and used in the scoring that you just talked about. So learning progressions tell our students and parents what the students know and are able to do. So I'm going to ask you all to think back to December when we had the Next Generation Science presentation. And we showed you an example just like this up on the screen. So we're going to review. The white box is the performance expectation. And this is what we use to build assessments. Then each of the colored boxes represent the 3 dimensions of our standard: the scientific engineering practices, the disciplinary core ideas, and the cross-cutting concepts. And this all represents a standard about cells in grade 7. So teachers will then create learning progressions or scoring rubrics that provide students with clear targets, and is usually, it is in student-friendly language. This is just a portion of the progression. I'm showing you a level 3 and the language for that. And this portion shows what students should know and be able to do, again, on that standard I showed you before in grade 7 for cells. The orange is the content. For this standard, teachers identified specific organelles that students need to identify and relate to the phenomenon at the microscopic and macroscopic level. The blue section is asking students to model this connection between structures, processes, and systems related to the phenomenon. And the green section is asking students to show the structure-function relationship between parts and systems. The students will be scored on each of these 3 distinct parts because you can have strengths or areas for growth for any of these 3 dimensions. And so now I'm going to show you 2 examples of student work that are scored at level 3s for each of these strands. So the end of unit prop for the cell lesson is to create a final model that explains how did consuming too much fluid lead to the athlete's brain swelling. And that was the phenomenon that we used for the unit. And you're going to notice that students identified the organelles. They have microscopic and macroscopic depictions, system interactions, and a model showing the effect on the organelles before the consumption of liquid, during, and after. And this is a very simplified summary of all the things that the students are able to communicate about the process that your body goes through when you have too much fluid. And here is another example. It looks different from the previous one, but it's also scored on a 3 for each of those strands on our progressions. And as I shared earlier, our teachers spend time calibrating the aspects of what a response should look like that meet these grade level expectations. It would take a large amount of time to calibrate which of these responses would be a 90, 91, or 93, and even more time for a student to know exactly how to approve a 91 to a 92. So it's important to ask, how do students perform using standard-based grading system? And they continue to perform at the top of our district reference group on state assessments. This table shows the percent of students who met or exceeded goal on the 2021 Connecticut NGSS assessment in grades 5 and 8. As we shared in December, the students continue to engage in extensions, science clubs, and after-school programs. And they continue to graduate from our science program and go to study at schools and pursue careers that are listed on this slide. And I would like to end the evening with a list of resource documents that are in our science professional learning library. They range from when we started this work in 2009 to a spike at the national level in 2011 and 12, and at the end in 2018. And I would recommend them to anyone who would like to learn more about grading. Now, new resources were not as prevalent in recent years during the pandemic, as our attention has shifted to other aspects of the educational program that is important right now. But we did start to see some more emerging as people are coming out of the pandemic and thinking about how did grading change for them when we were in different types of learning environments. So there's some great studies that are coming out around that. So I would like to thank you again for providing the time to give you an update on standard-based grading and open up for any comments or questions.
Thank you. Thanks for being back here with us. Any questions? Julie.
The slide that says what are strengths of standards-based grading, what would you say the weaknesses are?
I think one of the pieces with standard-based grading for our students that they struggle with is like they want to know the right answer, and they want to know what it takes to get the A or get the 90, and they seem to be driven for, I think Jace and Mr. Egan said it earlier, for the outcome versus the process. And so the students sometimes get frustrated when they want to know, like, what does this mean? Does this mean I have 100? Does this mean I have a 90? Like, what does a 3 mean to me? So I think that there's a lot of work talking about the mindset for students and to think about what is it that you know, and have this intrinsic kind of motivation for learning. And so I think that's one of the pieces that students might talk about.
I will just add, my observation has been over the years watching this, roll out, and, with now the convergence of the new standards and the work around innovation, it's starting, it feels like it's all coming together in a much tighter, and all the pieces are coming together. And I also, have noticed, I think the teachers appear to be, at least in like open houses when they talk about it, much more comfortable and supportive of the program and why it works for kids and students. So I'm just curious if you have anything to add in terms of the feedback and like the evolution and where we continue to move forward as we think about science at middle school next year and beyond.
I think there's always a move forward. I think your teachers talk a lot about how to help how can we use common language across the grades or across disciplines. We've been talking about in order to make students understand more when we say develop an argument. What does develop an argument mean in science or social studies or ELA? How are they similar and how are they different from each other? So I think it's nice to have that, be able to have after 2009, but now be able to have those levels of conversation. I think the clarity of our rubrics, so the one that we just looked at with the cells, that was developed at the end of last year and then used this year because we were really trying to make the learning progressions make sense for the kids, because that's the whole point of this, is it's effectively communicating where you are and where you can go from here. And so we were hearing from students that they weren't quite sure how they knew what they were learning, how they knew the next step to get on. So we're trying to make some of those learning progressions more student friendly for them.
I would just, I think this work has been underway, but just even going from like 6th grade when you're first introduced to standards-based grading all the way through 8th grade, when some of that work is now influencing the course planning for high school, is just to continue, because I think as parents come along the continuum too in terms of understanding the language and understanding the type of work and how the scoring is happening in class. And I do think the technology has improved as well, so it is more user-friendly in terms of being able to click in and see. But I would just continue to advocate for just more more communication and annually, because it does take, I think, time for parents. It's a 3-year period, but it's important to continue to have that refresh, I think, every year as you go into a different, science curriculum. So. Julie?
Do you see more classes going this way?
No, I can speak for science. I can speak for why it's right for us. And as I keep thinking about students and thinking about, how do we define success and what is success for them, and some of the presentations that we had heard recently from Dr. Bliss about the stress that students are under. One of the things you asked about, what were some of the challenges of it, but one of the things that the students said also was that it takes the stress off a bit because of that idea of failure, again, that seems to be with them. So I'm a huge proponent of it, as you can see, and support the science teachers through it. And there's paralleling work that takes place in each of the other disciplines through the rubrics that they're creating, and the language that they're using that's the same as ours as well. But I can just speak for the science piece.
Penny?
Well, I actually had the same question, which was, I know at one point we had said if we're only going to keep it for science, then define why it's only appropriate for science, or if we're going to spread it out and try it in other disciplines, just to be thoughtful in how we were doing that. So I was just wondering what the district's thinking was on that point. Might be more question for you, Jill.
Well, I think Melinda's done a nice job explaining why it's appropriate in science with the 3 dimensions of the science and being able to look at the different models that the students utilize. It was interesting because I think during COVID, when we started having conversations about grading students in the spring, the first thing that you heard from teachers in other subject areas, I wish we were standard-based grading right now, because it would be so much easier to give students feedback on what they've been doing in the springtime. I think right now we're at a place where we've had other things in other departments that we're working through, and you can see the research that started how many years ago, 2009. So it's a big commitment if we were going to make that commitment with all the other content areas. And so we would have to weigh out where do we take the break from some of the other work that we need to do the research in the standard-based grading. And so I think that's a conversation that I would rather have with all the administrators and the curriculum coordinators at the middle school before we would say, let's dive full force into standard-based grading for all content areas at this point. I think people are still working through adjusting some of those units of study, working through some of those assessments that they've done and had to condense and go back to priority standards, and working through gap areas of kids that had areas in math that were weak or areas in language arts. So I don't think it's right at this moment to start the research, but I think it's something that we certainly can look forward to in the future if it's a path that everybody feels comfortable going to at the middle school level. Julie?
Do students still get grade or number grades on assignments and tests?
They do not. They have a 1 to 4 score.
Dan?
So is there any normal like quiz and test taking?
There is, yes.
Okay.
So they have quizzes and tests just like any discipline, but they're scored on a 1 to 4 level for their understanding. And so sometimes if you want to know what that would look like, depending on what it is, it's actually kind of interesting what some students will do. So sometimes you might just have in some disciplines like a vocab test, right? You just need to know the words. So that's a level 2 for us when you're just being able to identify that. And we don't like to ever ceiling the expectations for our students. So even when we have a formative assessment where we're diving in to check the learning along the way, you'll have students that will write next to it why. So they'll say, if it's true or false, or multiple choice, more so multiple choice we would use, they actually will give you additional information that gives them a 3 or a connection that leads them to a 4. And so we're able to create assessments that don't have a ceiling for our students. And it really helps to challenge students, because the scales don't end. You don't have an A+ and that's the end. You now can, if you were seeing that you're meeting the standards, we give you another scale that puts you back into a 1, 2, 3, 4 with a new expectation for a 3. so that all students, whether you're in special education or whether you're in challenge or anywhere in between, you can work with the 1, 2, 3, 4 scale.
And does like content knowledge suffer in this model at all with respect, because it feels like it's very process and, you know, focused on like the model and the interaction and intertwining ideas and educational concepts versus, or maybe it seems it's harder to unpack the content mastery, at least from afar.
So that's actually why I think that it's a strength of standard-based grading, because if you see up here, like, that is your content. Characteristics of matter, atoms and periodic table, structures and functions of cells. Those are your hard DCIs, your disciplinary core ideas. When you looked at the learning progression, that middle column, those are your hard concepts. So you need to know those cell organelles. But it doesn't end at just knowing those cell organelles. You need to relate them to the phenomenon and then have them interact with each other within it. So if you are missing parts of what's in orange, so that's going to bring you down to your level 2. So level 2 is saying you're able to identify some of these organelles and how they're able to connect back to the phenomenon and represent the impact on the cell or the organ system or the organism, but you're not doing it at the standard level yet. So that's your hard science or your hard content knowledge. And some students are really good at mastering that. And that's when we're like, great, you're great at the content, but your modeling of that and your way that you're able to engage in that or to show the application of that content that you really know it is where you want to spend your time working.
And so is this stuff that's like laid out for the kids in each lesson? So they basically have something around like this grade 7 example and then the level 3 rubric, like, so they can follow this along? Okay.
Exactly. And that's when Ms. Parkhill was asking, like, where are we at now with some of the work, is to really make this as clearly defined as what you're seeing here for all of the standards that they're hitting. And so this is for our unit. So this is a unit on cells that will last from March and, the beginning of March until mid-April. So it's a length of time. And as I said, this is a level 2. So there's a full page document. I couldn't figure out how to make it reasonable to show you, but there's a full page document that has what would a 2 look like? What would a 4 look like? In order to kind of show them and to plan for, that's also a really good driver for this. How can I continue my learning? What is my next step? How can I think differently about this?
Bob.
So I get the concept of standards, and I get, I think in every other subject, right, we work on a 5-point scale, whether you want to call it A, B, C, D, F, or 1, 2. So we took 5 and went to 4. It's not clear to me how, basically giving a letter grade by standard versus this number, what's the difference? Or why is it so different? Like, you made a comment that, they don't know how to go from a 90 to a 92. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how I can go from a 3 to a 3.5 or even a 3.1 or whatever the gradients are on, like, to me, I don't see it. I'm trying to understand the difference, and it's not clear to me from anything that I read here so far on how, as a student, I would understand to go from a 3 to a 3.5 to a 4, other than an example, which you could show the same example that this is a D, right? This is really bad. This is an A. That's really good. So, I don't get what's so innovative on this kind of grading. So I'm clearly missing something, but what is it I'm missing?
I was looking, I'm sorry. I think one of the things when you listen to students talk about it, so at the beginning of this, we were recording students who were engaged in the early years of this, where we did standard-based grading with the 1, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then we flipped it because we were working with a power school in a traditional sense to a grade at the end of the marking period. And when we interviewed them in the middle of the quarter, and we said, tell us about how you're doing in class, the students were specific. They're like, I know these cell organisms, and they interact in this way, or plate tectonics, whatever it is. They talked about what it was that they knew. And then as soon as we gave them the grade at the end of the quarter, and we went in mid-quarter of the second quarter, they said, oh, I know how I'm doing because I have an A, or I have a B. And we said, all right, well, what does that mean? Well, it means I'm doing okay. I have an A or a B. Well, what are you learning? And they're like, oh, maybe something like decimals. Like, it wasn't really clear, and it was more ambiguous than the students actually engaged in really understanding what the targets are for themselves.
Well, couldn't I show that I could show the Common Core math standards or ELA standards and have them understand those the same way?
Yeah, I think that's why some of this works in those systems too. I think when I look at the ELA standards or the mathematical the rubrics that are given out, they're very paralleling to this, and so I think that there are different systems that you can use for students, and I think that I don't want to speak for them, but they're really, we're trying as much as we can to make the language very similar across them.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is when you leave here, this doesn't happen. It's usually either a number or a letter grade. So like, I guess that's the other question I have is like, well, why introduce a grading that just kind of goes away? Unless there's some magnificent kind of insight that this would give us.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I see Erica has a question too, so I was gonna. Yeah. Go ahead, Erica.
Sorry. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Great. Thanks, Melinda. I was just wondering, are there other districts, either in our DIRG or in Connecticut or elsewhere, that use standard-based grading? And is it for middle school? Is it for science? I just want to get an understanding of, do we have peers in undertaking this work, and peer set that is also experiencing some of the transitions that we are in doing it?
We did visit some schools early on in Connecticut who use standard-based grading within the system. We don't have anyone in our DIRG that uses it, but there are neighboring districts that reach out a couple of times a year saying we're really struggling figuring out three-dimensional learning within a traditional system. And so we have had conversations with them, but the DIRG schools do not currently use that. And it's not unusual. So in New Canaan, we're known for our innovation in science and have been leaders of change with NGSS and STEM programming. So it's not new for us to be ahead or forerunners of this. I also tried to, so the research that we used back in 2018 included schools, now I haven't checked back, like in Connecticut, that we visited to see if they have continued to maintain that. But I did quickly look at some of the schools that we have referenced in some other presentations, like in California. Some of those are even high schools that are using standard-based grading. So I can share some lists with administration and they can get those to you if you want those.
I guess the question I would add to just hearing what you said, Bob, is just how does this translate to our performance when the kids move to high school? So when they go into geophysical science or honors biology or whatever classes they're taking, how does this translate to hopefully improve success in those classes?
Mm-hmm. And we have asked them a little bit about that. And so sometimes when we talk to the high school students, they'll say that it's a little bit of a bumpy transition for them because they're coming from standard-based grading and now they're at the high school. And when we start to, we call it like peel back the onion, the layers of it. What we uncover in the past is that it's actually the assessment practices that are so different for our students. And so our students in the middle school are engaged in performance-based assessments. They're engaged in the modeling experiences that we just walked through here. And so when they were getting to some of the higher science classes at the high school, they were Scantron and multiple choices. And so they had never seen those before or engaged in those. But over the years, and where we are now, we have a new course, geophysical science in 9th grade, and that's an NGSS aligned courses. And they do claims, evidence, reasoning, the CERs, they do the modeling. And so students are now saying, oh, like this is actually really familiar to us because those courses are modeled after the same things that we're modeling our middle school program through.
And I can speak from observation in the high school and walking into a geophysical science class and them actually working on the science table with the dry erase markers and actually doing their entire modeling on the dry erase on the table right in front of them and talking about it, and then walking around the room and talking about what might their model be missing that another group has of their model. I also want to point out that when you do standard-based grading, you also are developing a deep knowledge of those content standards that is part of a planning tool that teachers utilize as part of their instruction. I also want to point out that when you're looking at the representation of the model that's here as an assessment, you're only looking at the level 3. So you're not looking at what a student would have been scored if it was a level 1, a level 2, or a level 4. I also want to bring back the whole Bloom's taxonomy. We use depth of knowledge now, but it's very similar to Bloom's taxonomy. So it goes back to when you look and you would see a traditional assessment might be describe what a cell membrane is. So you're talking about a little level 1 kind of question that you're asking of the students. It's a recall. And this is bringing it to that level 4 of that depth of knowledge. It's taking it, applying it. So you have to be able to apply it when you're utilizing this next generation science standards. And I think because we're doing this is why our students are performing so well. I think that they're feeling very comfortable doing this modeling. They're feeling very comfortable adding those details in of the vocabulary, how they explain their thinking, what goes into it. It's quite elaborate when you walk into a science class and you watch them doing these kinds of assessments. And I think that just moves forward as we're moving that shift of next generation science standards into high school. So we're seeing it in the geophysical class. We're moving into the storyboarding that's going to be taking place in the bio classes, which is moving into the physics. It's just part of the path that we're following with science, which is where the universities are also going, because it's all about the thinking that the kids are doing, and they have to have the recall. They have to know these vocabulary words. They have to know what each of these parts of the cell do in order to apply it. Makes sense. Julie?
Kind of piggybacking off of what Erica asked, why do you think other districts in our DIRG are reaching out, asking about it, and not taking the plunge and making that jump?
I think well, I can't answer the last part of that, but I can say that they're reaching out because, and it's not just our DIRG. We have teachers who attend the NSTA is our National Science Teachers Association, and they run workshops all the time across the nation and internationally. And whenever we're learning more about NGSS and how to deliver instruction in our classrooms and design assessments, in the chat, always people start to naturally go to, how do I communicate this out to parents and to students in an effective way? I don't understand how I can score this in a traditional manner when it's such a complex piece. And so so that is why some of the DIRG schools have reached out to say, like, right now we're having the conversations that you had back in 2009, like, how are we going to give feedback to students on these different elements, and also be able to bring clarity to it by pulling out this non-academics from the grade itself as well.
Other questions? Okay. Erica?
You referenced earlier that the standards-based grading is similar to what you have in elementary school, and that would also be my observation of just looking at report cards, that they are for across subjects standards, and then it is more of it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 by name, but it's essentially that. What are the differences between the way science specifically is graded in K through 4 or K through 5, I guess, as opposed to then 6 through 8? Or is standards-based grading essentially the same as the way that we're grading in elementary school?
So we don't have as many standards in elementary school, is the essence of elementary science. But you will see that you'll have a content level for elementary school in the report card, and then you'll have the specific scientific engineering practices that they're working on. And some of them are purposeful to go across years, so we can watch growth of students across years in those practices. And some of them are distinct to the skills that we're trying to develop within that grade level. So there might be data analysis in 3rd and 4th grade, but really taking a look at some of the asking questions and raising questions and asking problem. I can't remember which one it is, but in the earlier grades. And so those are also scored on sometimes more of a frequency than a depth of understanding. And so one of the main shifts when you go from 5 to 6 is that the 1, 2, 3, 4 is representing the complexity or the depth of understanding of how students are using that content knowledge.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to, we have an update on our summer curriculum work with Dr. Krenti.
Good evening. So before I get started talking about the projects, I just wanted to give you just a little bit of background. So the projects sometimes are completed during the summertime, and sometimes the projects will go throughout the course of a school year. Some of the projects are continuations from previous years, and it's very rare that we're doing complete overhauls of an entire curriculum. So when we're talking about curriculum, we're usually talking about revisions to curriculum. And I think if you'll recall from the curriculum presentation, oftentimes you're thinking of a unit, you're thinking of a course, and within that course, there might be 4 to 6 units of study. And sometimes they may only be working and tweaking one unit, and they may only be working in the learning stage of that unit. Or they may be working on the performance-based assessment that goes along with that unit. So when you look at an English class of 7th grade, there might be 5 to 6 units of study, but the revision may be only taking place in one unit of study, and it may only be concentrated in the learning stage. So when I describe some of the projects that will be taking place during the summertime, I'll try to emphasize how large that project is to just kind of give you a better perspective, because there's quite a few projects that come every single year in regards to tweaks and revisions, and they're all ranging at different levels based on where they are in the process, how our students are performing, what the teachers are coming together and having conversations about. So I will kind of go through them as quickly as possible because I have quite a few, and I know it's getting late, but I'm also available to answer any questions that you might have. So I tried to divide them up according to departments because I think that's the best way to organize it for all of you. And the first one is the math department. So we're at a point now where we've been working on a 5-year project in mathematics, and we are beginning our last year of our math revisions for grade 5. So in the fall, we'll be rolling out our math revisions to grade 4, and we always need to stay 1 year ahead. So during the summer, and as we move into next school year, we'll be making those revisions for grade 5. So if you recall, this was actually a budget question 5 years ago when we had to make a decision about the new math resources that we were going to utilize. And that was our math investigations program. The book that we were currently using was going out of date. We did a textbook adoption process, and after the end of it, everybody came back to saying that the math investigations textbook was the best book for us to be utilizing. And so we've followed a cohort of kids to make it logical for them. And so the revisions began 5 years ago with kindergarten, and now we're at the place where we're entering into 5th grade and making those revisions. So today, during professional learning, you can imagine what the 4th grade teachers did. They spent time unpacking the new units of study that they'll be rolling out starting in August with the new math series and working through those standards and making sure that everything's aligned as they go forward. And then that will continue for all the 4th grade teachers across the district throughout the course of the year next year. In addition to math, we also have what we call an Algebra 1 boot camp. So we have some students who will be enrolling in our Achievement Academy. Some of them are students who are ELL, and we've noticed that they have some gap areas in the area of math. So we've worked really hard to create a boot camp for them that's bringing them back to some of the pre-algebra skills that they're missing, and actually doing some pre-teaching of algebra skills that they'll come in contact with next year. So as you can imagine, as our students of ELL are learning the academic language is the hardest thing for our students of English language learners to learn. So we're trying to give them a head start. That also holds true as we move into looking at our algebra unit of study as students enter into 9th grade. And we have many students who are still struggling with some of those pre-algebra skills. So they're going to be spending some time looking at the units of study, particularly looking at the learning stage and trying to see how are there ways that they can scaffold and bring certain skills that they know kids have difficulties with back to pre-algebra and then move them forward up through that algebra. We know that algebra is the basis for some of the success that kids will have in the future math courses that they'll take at the high school. We're also working on 2 new courses for our downtown campus math seminar. And so when we have kids that are at the downtown campus, they range in grade levels. And so we're trying to create a course for freshmen and sophomores that would be a combination of algebra and geometry. And then we'll be creating a course for our juniors and seniors in the program that would be a combination of Algebra 2 and statistics. We're also spending some time just doing some math analysis, going back and looking at a variety of different units of study, just kind of pulling them apart to make sure that we're hitting those priority standards and taking a look at how that may be needed to be adjusted as we continue to move into block scheduling. VPA, you had an opportunity to listen to Alan Sneath, so you can imagine that's some of the work that we're going to be continuing throughout the summer as Alan presented, and we're moving that shift with our visual and performing arts standards. We're also, he mentioned during that presentation about the high school course that will be the UConn ECE class on advanced filmmaking. So Jen Sinsky will be working on that this summer and preparing that as we move into the fall. We've already gotten our course approval from UConn. We're ready with our syllabus, but now it's really diving into that lesson planning. We're also going to be offering a new middle school course, and that's going to be called Music Explorations. So as students enter into 5th grade, they need to make a choice of their music, and they can either choose to do band, orchestra, chorus, or music technology. And over the course of the years, we've had a wide range of kids that really would just like to do kind of an extension of what they do in elementary school, where they can really just celebrate a wide variety of music and continue to kind of have more of that exploration of music, as you would call it, and a variety of learning some instruments, learning about different types of music. And so that will be a new course that we're going to be offering for 5 through 8. We're going to continue, as you can imagine, with NGSS. So that was another Board of Education presentation to all of you. And so we'll be working at the high school level, and the teachers will be working on that alignment, specifically with biology. So we're feeling very comfortable with the geophysical. We've gotten some of our units done in biology, but now we're ready to roll over to some of the more storyboarding that needs to take place in the bio. And then we'll be continuing some of the work at the middle school and looking at those assessments as Melinda just described. We have a couple proposals that have come in from World Language. So we would like to propose an AP Chinese course for the 23-24 school year. So we have a cohort of students who started back in middle school learning Mandarin, and we're at a place now that they're starting to top off as juniors. And so we need one level more of our students as they move into their senior year. And so it's going to be an AP class. So we're working to get the course syllabus ready, get all of the material ready, because it has to be approved by College Board. And so that's a process that we have to go through in order to put it into our course study program in February and be ready to run for the 23-24 school year. We also are looking at our Latin 1 course. We need to make some revisions to some of the units of study so that they align with the different course levels of Latin 2, 3, and 4. And so it's kind of that vertical alignment. We're also taking a look at the Latin mythology course that we offer at the downtown campus and just designing some different kinds of assessments that we can use with that course as well. And then similar to math, there's also some world language analysis going on to kind of take a look at some of our UBDs as we continue to work through that block scheduling. So as you can imagine, especially as you move into the high school, it is immersion. When you walk into a language class in the high school, it is very, very rare that you hear English being spoken. They are in the native language the entire time. And so you can imagine as you move into block scheduling to have kids and teachers conversing in that native language for 80 minutes is a large block of time. So it's how do they adjust and how do they provide a variety of giving them an opportunity to speak, to listen, to read in the language, to write in the language, and how do you kind of balance that all out in an 80-minute block of time. We're continuing our work in digital literacy. As you know, this is just an ever-changing area. So it's constantly going back, taking a look at the different units of study that we offer in 5 through 8 and making adjustments along the way. We're also continuing some of our work in social studies, really looking at that stage 3 to assure that differentiation in grades 5 through 8. And then at the elementary level, as you might recall from the presentation, we do really get into some of the lesson specifics that can take place at that 2nd grade or that 3rd grade class. We also have some work going on in CTE with our food and nutrition and our advanced TV course. And we'll be doing some updates of units of study. It's been a while since they've looked at that advanced TV, and our broadcasting program has just grown, so it's time to make some revisions and tweaks. We also have some work going on in our challenge program in middle school, and it's really looking at that vertical alignment 5 through 8 with our challenge program. We continue to always look at the lessons that we have for connections at the high school and certainly at our EI lessons in K through 8. We're also looking at the library in the elementary schools, and we're looking at making sure that our units of study are aligned to the American Association of School Libraries as well as the International Society for Tech Ed, so ISTE and AASL. In English, we have just 2 small projects. In 8th grade, they currently have 6 units of study, and they're feeling that the pacing of those units of study is really fast. And so they're looking to take a look at the unit, the 5th unit of study and the 6th unit of study and collapsing that into 1 unit of study. So pulling out what the priority standards are to give the English teachers a little bit more time with that unit of study. And they think that that would help slow down the pace for the kids as they're moving into high school. At the high school, they're really looking at rubrics for student self-assessment and how students go about scoring themselves on self-assessments. So they're doing some research on that and looking to help design a rubric that the English teachers would be able to utilize. Another big project is NEASC. So we're getting ready to move into our self-study report. And so there's a lot of work that will be taking place this summer where they'll be doing some looking at student work, preparing a gallery walk, and ultimately hoping that all of this work will help to inform their core values, their belief statements, all the standards that they need to do for this report. And that collaborative visit takes place in 23-24. So there's a lot of work that needs to take place in advance to getting us prepared for our NEASC visit. And then we do have some other work that we do in regards to some special accommodations for students when they're moving into different levels. So we do have a student who's visually impaired who'll be moving into the high school. So as you can imagine, preparing the materials that the student would need and trying to get them to be translated into Braille, as well 3D modeling, all the kinds of materials. And so the high school department chairs are actually taking the leadership on that and working closely, hopefully with the new visually impaired teacher that will get hired, to prepare as we're moving into that work with the student. So that's just a summary, brief summary, tried to go as quick as possible of about, 25 to 35 projects that those teachers will be working on.
Busy summer.
I'm just going to expand on one thing.
Sure.
NEASC
Yeah.
is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They are Connecticut's and New England's accrediting organization. So NEASC, which we call it, it's a decennial accreditation process. They're looking at moving it to every 5 instead of 10 years. But that's the body that is empowered to accredit high schools across the region. So you hear about schools being accredited or not, and that's what NEASC is. And Tri-State is next year in March as well, so I'm sure there's lots of preparation around that too.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, that's
There's a tri-state
voluntary
visit
one.
too.
So NEASC is mandatory. It's required every so often that you do that in order to keep your accreditation. And that is a 9 through 12 process.
We can certainly have high school representation come and explain.
They will.
The process.
Yeah.
And then we'll certainly talk about our tri-state visit to the Board of Education in the fall as well, as we map that out. But I would imagine that would be another project.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Correnti. Questions? Okay. Dan?
I know we talked about it a little bit before, but I guess what's the time frame for the district goals, first draft, and then some work in between, like some discussion at the board level? What's the expectation around when that will be mapped out over the next period of time?
So our process around district goals has been, now that we've concluded the school year, we'll sit and talk to the folks that are involved with each of those goals. So Melinda with the science goals, and Alan with VPA and Olin, and then bring a draft before the board on July 18th at our July meeting. And then that would be a first read. It's always a first reading. And then our next meeting scheduled with the Board of Ed is the August meeting. I think everyone has those dates. I think those were sent out. And we had talked about if we wanted to put a workshop or something in between in order to talk about anything that's on those goals. We're certainly happy to do that. My target is to try to get the draft to the board as early as possible. So what we're looking at doing is, as there's 5 goals, and within each goal we've got a number of objectives and indicators, things. So as we finish each goal, instead of waiting for the entire document to be complete, to send those out in draft. So you could goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at different times, just so that the board could have as much run-up time to the 18th as possible in order to be able to help with that conversation.
All right. Yep.
You touched on it a little bit with math. I guess it was like a new math investigations textbook that happened maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Is that, or?
So it wasn't a new it was a new edition of our existing textbook.
Okay.
So when we went through the textbook adoption process, we had we had narrowed down the search to 3 textbooks, and we came back to choosing the new edition of the current textbook that we were using at that time, and then we just moved forward to the whatever 5th edition, whatever it might be.
And are there any other, across some of the other subjects, where you're expecting either going to new editions or evaluating new textbook or new, I imagine some of it's actually more like computer programs or other things that you also use. Is that across these other things that being picked up this summer?
So actually, the textbook adoption process is usually done by the entire department. So probably the next textbook that we're looking at is for one of the science courses. And so it's usually the teachers that are teaching that science course, and it usually takes a long time period for them to go through what they might choose to use and even narrow it down to 2 or 3 textbooks. So they tend to do that through their PLCs during the school year, and then if they're finding that they can't get it done through their PLCs during the school year, then they'll be calling me and looking for after-school time to do that work. But I'm imagining, I think if I'm recalling correctly, I think it was science where I was looking at Melinda with Michael at CLC, where he was thinking about there might be one for science that we're looking at. But I can't, I'll have to go back at my notes and think, but I think it's science.
All right. Thank you for the update. All right. right, now we'll move on to our action items. We have a couple of donations. The first is a Friends of New Canaan Hockey donation. And I'll ask for a motion to accept a donation from the Friends of New Canaan Ice Hockey of $21,872 to supplement ice rental costs for the boys ice hockey program, and one of $15,169 to supplement rental ice costs for the girls hockey program. Penny, second. Julie, any comments?
My only comment is the word supplement is purposefully chosen. This is not enrichment. We actually budget expecting this income from the Friends of New Canaan Ice Hockey because it's a partnership that we have with them. And so they do fundraise part of those costs, and the budget covers the rest of those costs.
Great. And I'll just say thank you to
Yeah.
all of those.
I think it's a wise investment. to
Yes,
say
it
the
is.
least.
We've,
Yeah.
hockey teams have done tremendously well, and I know ice time is incredibly expensive, so it's a huge boost for those kids who play hockey, so thank you.
Right. The alternative would be that they wouldn't have nearly the practice time that they have, and the
Yeah.
time on the ice is essential. Routine?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's kind of related just because it's sports, but you want to finish the vote? And I can ask?
Oh, go ahead and ask, and then we'll vote if it's,
But I'm just curious, on the presentation, the other schools in the dirt had paid for play. What does that mean in that context versus like donations? Like,
Sure. So pay for play literally is students are assessed a fee in order to be on the team.
Got it.
So every student pays X amount.
Right, right.
And these are donations that are raised.
Right, so
And,
the play, there's not an expectation they have to donate.
Exactly. And we have some other sponsorships that are larger amounts and things like that that help.
okay, take a vote. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous, thank you. Next is the All Sports Booster Club donation. I'll ask for a motion to accept a donation of $7,500 from the New Canaan All Sport Booster Club to provide facility and resource enrichment for New Canaan High School athletics. Phil, second. Dan?
Very quickly, Huddle is the online platform that we use. It allows us to stream our games for people to be able to watch remotely. Of course, that boomed during the restrictions around COVID. Now people find it's very convenient. If they can't physically get there, they can log in. But more importantly, it allows the analytics afterwards. So coaches and players have at their disposal all of the video where they can rewind, fast forward, pause, and really sort of work on the skills, breaking down what's the action into its component parts, which we know is good coaching. And they also use it to put together videos for colleges and other things like that. So highlight reels, it's good stuff. So this helps us. There's a budget line for us for Huddle, and the school district budget pays the difference. And we're working through some contract questions with them right now.
All right, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the All Sports Booster Club. Okay, next we have our statement of accounts with Dr. Keating.
Good evening. So you have before you tonight the May 31st, 2022 financial statements for the district. We are currently expended at 80.6% of our budget. Another 15.2% is encumbered, primarily in the area of salaries. As you know, we do a balloon payment to our teachers and our TAs and other 10-month employees at the end of June. And so we have 4.2% of the budget remaining. There's two transfers tonight before you. The first one is for $95,000 out of the substitute teacher account, which would end the year at $150,000 surplus without this transfer. You've heard all the reasons why we are running a surplus in that account thus far this year. We have assessed some of the cameras within the schools, mostly interior cameras for surveillance, and we do have some areas that we would like to shore up inside the schools. And then we also have some equipment that we need to replace that we've been emptying out trailers where we were storing classroom furniture during COVID. It's coming out of the trailers. Some of it's rusted, some of it has mold on it, so we have to dispose of it and replace that. So $95,000 should cover most of that, as we can see right now. If not, we will do an additional transfer when we close the books, but we're looking to stay within this allotment. And then finally, at the time we presented our budget to the town bodies, particularly the finance board, they cut our budget $1.3 million, and that was in the area of health insurance. Specifically, that was their recommendation. So we fully funded all the other accounts, so we're going to move forward with the budget plan as presented by the Board of Ed to the Board of Finance at that time. But this $1.3 million is an outstanding issue for the district. And so just to get you up to date, we recently received our renewal on the stop-loss insurance for next year. Initially, it came in $300,000 higher than Joe Spurgeon's estimates. So we had to do some work presenting Voya with the calculations that Joe used, his data, and his supporting information. And we were, after some good work between Larry and Joe, able to bring it down to Joe's number. So for next year, we do have our calculations pretty much set because we know our maximum exposure. What we are waiting on is the current year, which would be either plus or minus our projections. We are right in the area. To be honest with you, we have a couple more drawdowns. We have some accruals at year end for 4 days of claims that will be paid the last week of June. And the incurred but not reported is adjusted at year end based on the projected liability. So those numbers are 4 numbers that we're currently waiting on. But we're right now within $1 million on that number. So it's going to be, we're going to get very close to that $1 million number. What that means is, as we go into next year, we have to shore up this $1.3 million that we were reduced. The Board of Finance did suggest to us that we take the $463,337 that was put aside for certain end time changes, transfer it into the ISF fund. So in order to do that, I'm asking the board to approve that transfer tonight, and we will make it. I've notified the town that we would be making this transfer. And also just to remind you, at budget time when we did the reclassification and the reforecast, we had anticipated an increase in claims of $500,000, so both of those sums will go over. So currently, we're probably looking at anywhere between $700,000 and $900,000, unless something really nice happens and our claims come down in the next few weeks, as a request that you would be putting forward this coming summer to the board.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. The Resources Committee spent some time reviewing this in great detail last week, so I think we're in a good place there. Okay, so I'll ask for a motion to approve the transfers as listed in the statement of accounts dated May 31st, 2022. Penny, second. Hugo, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next we have a first reading of policy 1101, remote participation. This was an existing policy that has undergone a revision as proposed by the Governance Committee. So I'll first ask for a motion to accept as a first reading the revised Board of Education policy number 1101 on remote participation. Phil, second. Dan. Dr. Lutzy, you want to speak to it?
Sure, and as you see, it is revised. We do have a policy 1101 that was created last year. The Governance Committee reviewed this as well. There's been a change in state statute. As you may recall, the legislature permitted remote participation in meetings for all town boards across the board through the pandemic, and that was set to sunset on April 30th of 22. Governor Lamont and the legislature decided that they wanted to remove that sunset date and keep it active in perpetuity, at least until they make a change otherwise. So it did impact the policy that we had on the books. We had created our policy prior to this legislation being enacted over the summer in preparation for the upcoming year. So we had some restrictions in our policy that were no longer appropriate given the statute and the change in statute. We had a maximum number of times you could be remote. We had a 72-hour notification requirement, which I was very happy about. We had a few other little things that the statute is really more permissive than that. So we've wanted to align our policy with what the statute permits, because it is really trying to expand and allow for as much participation as possible on the part of board members at board meetings, given all of what we've accomplished these last couple of years and use of technology. And, as we're even experiencing tonight, it generally works pretty well for folks. So I was glad with the change in the legislation that it permitted this, the ability to do this. So of course for us, it's, if you can notify us 24 hours in advance, that's very helpful, just to make sure you have, if you're remote, you have whatever documents are there. As we move to board docs, which there was some training today, and for Michelle, she's going to do another training, and she's talking to them about the board training, which is about 20 minutes. It's very simple, but as we move to that, I think it'll simplify this even more, streamline it for board members, because all of the documents will be there in that portal, so you'll be able to access that right away. So we're moving towards making this work as smoothly as possible. So we ask for 24 hours notice if possible, and ask that folks who participate from home have their camera on while they're doing it. So it's because it is like being fully present, active, at the meeting. So we'd want that. So those are the couple of changes that are in here. In the folder, you'll see the old policy. We didn't print it out tonight, but I'm glad to go into more detail with anybody if you feel like. But I think it's, I'm happy for the change in Hartford. I think it'll help board members, especially over the summertime. But it'll help us to get quorums together when we need. It also permits us, if we need a special meeting for any purpose, it doesn't have to be an emergency meeting. It can be a special meeting, and we can do that all electronically now, where we couldn't before once this was sunset. So it does give the board some more flexibility.
Any questions? Dan?
So, I know we talked about this during the governance committee a little bit, and I see some change language here, but the paragraph where we talk about the board member announcing themselves, if they're remote, I would just suggest maybe, because it's almost, like it happens today, it's like, or if recognized by the board chair, so that like if the chair says it's the person's turn to talk, like that should be sufficient versus them needing to.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, language seems more appropriate if you're on a call on the phone versus literally being on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our goal is always to have the screen so the cameras are.
And this is just for consideration, but where it's additionally BOE members are expected to be visible, I think that's a strong preference where possible. So I don't know if we want to make it that more of like a good faith effort, the same way you did the language above, or keep it as expected. I don't know that I care one way or the other, but if people, there are certainly going to be unforeseen circumstances or, kids dive bombing that may require a period of time to.
Yeah.
Happy to change it. I think it's the spirit that we're
Yeah.
after, right? But certainly if someone has to step away. The challenge is if someone turns off their camera and steps away, you don't know, are they there to vote? Are they not? Are they, so it
Right.
does make it a little trickier to manage that meeting is all, but.
I think it should be, there are exceptions for sure, but, I think the idea is if you're participating in the meeting, you're present for most every part of that meeting, if not all of it, so.
So if we want to keep the language, that's fine. I think that's more just a discussion.
Sure.
We talked about it too, so.
Sure. Okay, great. All right, if any other questions, just let someone on the governance committee know, Dan. Otherwise, we'll vote on it next meeting.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Good, I think it'll be helpful. Great. Thanks.
All right. Now we have a very special moment of recognition for Dr. Keating in her retirement from the Board of Education in New Canaan Schools. I know some of us have some things to say we want to share with you, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lutzy to kick it off.
Well, thank you, Katrina. And save the best for last, Dr. Keating.
That's right.
Almost last, then we have an executive session, so don't leave that. But I do want to just quickly share, it is a privilege for me to speak on behalf of my friend, Dr. Keating, who will be retiring at the conclusion of this school year. Since joining our district in 2015, Dr. Keating has expertly led our finance, transportation, facilities, food services, risk management, and technology departments. And she's done that with integrity and professionalism the whole time. She's been a mentor and friend to many of us throughout her impressive career. And it would truly take pages and pages and pages for me to detail all of her outstanding contributions to our district. It's every noble person's goal to leave a place better than they find it. And Dr. Keating has far exceeded that goal by every measure. Many of us will miss Joanne terribly. She has been a friend and a trusted colleague, and it has been a privilege to work together. In truth, I tried talking her into staying a few more years, but her home in Florida, her wonderful family, some of whom I was able to meet today, others who I've met through the years, and her great friends, they're all waiting, and she's ready to take this next step. So although we will miss her, any sadness that we feel pales in comparison to the deep gratitude we have for our wonderful 7 years together and the great joy we feel watching our friend and colleague take this next step. As you know, we've developed a transition plan that Joanne has already been implementing with Sean. He's been in the district. He joined us this morning for an audit committee meeting. He's been meeting with his staff as well. Joanne also will be available to help us out periodically throughout the summer, probably when she's not starting her new hobbies, and maybe even on the golf course with Chuck if he can get you there. But without a doubt, Joanne's legacy in the New Canaan Public Schools and throughout her extraordinary career is one of integrity, expertise, strength, and kindness. She's an outstanding leader and a person, one who's never wavered in her commitment to do the right thing in the right ways for the right reasons. Joanne's left an indelible mark on our district, one that we will all continue to benefit from for many years. So I personally am forever grateful for our 7 years together. I've learned more from Joanne than I could ever explain, and it has truly been a privilege and an honor to work alongside Dr. Keating and do our work together as a cabinet on behalf of the Board of Ed, the district, our students, and the entire community. So I just want to take a moment to just say congratulations, and as you know, onward ever, Dr. Keating. Thank you.
That's okay. You're going to feel a lot of love in this room tonight. So I'll add that we're sad that this time has come. We knew it was coming, but tonight is about recognizing and celebrating you and your great work. We are filled with gratitude for your incredible contributions during your time here in New Canaan, and I can say I have so much respect and admiration for you and the work that you do. As I reflect on the years of your time in New Canaan and our time working together, I can't think of a question you couldn't answer or a spreadsheet you didn't master within seconds, and if there's an error in it, you will find it like immediately. Oversight and management of the short and long-term work of school finance and operations is really complex work, and that's something I didn't fully appreciate until the years I've spent working alongside you. And there's just so much breadth and depth to the work that you do, and the impact you have on the overall student experience is really incredible, from the moment kids get on the bus in the morning to the bus driver, to the walking into our buildings and the care and keeping of those buildings and making those buildings as great as they need to be, and energy efficiency, everything you can think of. And the food that they eat and the cafeteria experience, that all falls within your purview. And then all those budget seasons, they're very memorable. And that's where some of your best work and where you've really shined over the years, and we're just so grateful. So what's always impressed me most is that you're guided by doing what is best for the education of our kids. And I've seen the countless ways you've made such a huge difference in the lives of thousands of children in our school district and all those who work in our schools. So you have made our schools better, and for that we are very grateful. Everything you do is guided by excellence, your depth of knowledge, and so much kindness. You're gracious, and you have an incredible amount of patience. So, Joanne, you're just truly awesome. You're an awesome person, and we will miss you greatly. So I'll see if anybody else has anything to say. I do have some remarks from Brendan, who was sad to not be able to be here tonight, but I wanted to read his remarks.
Well, I mean, Joanne, you're a little quiet, so you just kind of came in and you got to work. And so it took me a while to realize what a star you are. But you, I had the great fortune to work with you on the Saks auditorium and classroom addition projects. And you were a key part of our team and our success in bringing that project, to fruition. And I'm so thankful that I never had to master all the complexities dealing with financing from the state. And all that went incredibly smoothly. So thank you for all of your wisdom on that work. And you have transformed in such a positive way the way we do all of our budgeting and our budgets for the public schools. I didn't even realize it until I was looking at sort of the new budget. And I absolutely, the way we now encumber everything, we have zero-based budgeting. We build the budget up every year. It is so transparent, the budget, with all the information, and yet you can sort of like go through all the steps and find it. And that has been a tremendous benefit to the board and to all the town bodies in understanding it, and that was your vision. We're greener and we're leaner. We have solar on all of the buildings now, or it's going up on the high school. You and Dan have been just amazing. You brought us, Dan, thank you. You've been just amazing in what you've done with energy management systems and bringing in-house expertise to help us. You could go on and on. The LED lighting, just all the ways that have saved us. You've saved us hundreds of thousands, and I think that's probably seven figures, well into seven figures of money for this district. And as others have said, your focus the entire time has been on the wellness and the advancement of every child in this district. And you've done everything you can, even when it was difficult, to help create, this whole team does, but you in particular have, to help each student advance as much as they're able. And that child-centeredness and everything is what sort of, I think, is the hallmark of the New Canaan Public Schools. And you've taken us, just advanced us so much. And on a personal level, I'm going to miss your warmth and your wisdom and your wit. Yeah. Absolutely. We'll have a match in Florida.
Sounds great. Well said. I'll read Brennan's statement now. Dr. Keating will be sorely missed by our Board of Education and by all of our town leadership. She has been an absolutely outstanding partner to the board and has provided unwavering leadership in so many critical areas to keep our schools moving forward despite many challenges, particularly over the past few years. I'm sure many people in town are not aware of how big Dr. Keating's job is. She has responsibility not just for finance, but really does keep our schools operational day after day without fail, from our school buildings to transportation, technology, contracting, and food service. Success in her job is mission critical. Ensuring that nearly 5,000 people can safely and productively teach and learn each day is what Joanne has done these past 7 years. It requires foresight, precise planning, confidence, and experience. And during COVID, it required incredible creativity. Joanne has shined here in New Canaan. Put simply, I am amazed at how well she does her job. Quietly and mostly without fanfare. She is nevertheless a superstar. On a personal note, as someone who advises CFOs regularly, I can say that Joanne is right at the top. She is absolutely world-class. Her dedication to New Canaan's kids leaves an indelible mark on a generation of them. Joanne, I will miss you. Please enjoy your retirement. Yeah. So on behalf of the Board of Education, we put together, we'll call it a little bit of a New Canaan to Florida retirement care package. And it has some things that you and Chuck might enjoy. Pickleball might be the theme. course.
How could you not love working in a district that is so gracious and so kind and so supportive of your work? And that's how I felt here. I felt it that way all along. You're great people. New Canaan has wonderful people, and all the people who have been on this Board of Education, to a T, every person I've worked with for 7 years has been extremely devoted and caring for children. And that is at the core of who we all are. The cabinet is amazing. You have the A+++ team, I think, and my colleagues here. And I would also support Bill Egan's proclamation at graduation that we have not only the best superintendent in Connecticut, but arguably in the whole United States. I've worked for a lot, and he's the best. And I'm going to miss everybody terribly. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being so kind and gracious to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
He was going to make sure nothing went wrong. And we had a beautiful send-off this afternoon as well. Beautiful gathering. Joanne's 2 daughters came with their kids and family and town representatives and school folks. It was a very nice afternoon.
It was. Yep. All right. Thank you. We wish you the very best. Okay. Dr. Lutzy, you're back on.
Okay.
Announcements and future business.
No comments from the public, Dan? All right. As the board is aware, we took a look at the summer schedule. We have one meeting in July. That's scheduled for July 18th. As I mentioned before, that'll be the first reading of the district goals, and we're going to finish up the bullying policy. We've had a first reading on that. We're just waiting for some plain language work from the state. They're supposed to be publishing something that we can link to in our policy. And if it's not ready by then, we'll just write it ourselves and have it done. So give us a little time with that. We'll have a few more things that come for the 18th as well, such as we'll look at enrollment, see where our staffing is, get a midsummer update on a couple of important items as we typically do.
Okay. Great. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 1-200. The subjects to be discussed are 1, matters concerning security strategy and the deployment of security personnel and devices and/or devices affecting public security, and 2, contract negotiations and strategy. Dan, second. Penny, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.